This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Nearly 30 Iraqis were killed and dozens of others were wounded in a 3-car bomb and gunfire attacks targeting a minibus carrying employees from the Shiites Community Center near a gas station in Baghdad. In another development, Iraq's Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki rejected a proposal by the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan to hold an international conference on Iraq. Al-Maliki also criticized Annan for saying that many Iraqis believe that the current situation in Iraq is now worse than it was during the reign of Saddam Hussein.
يريد ولا يريد. عبد العزيز الحكيم يريد من على منبر المكتب البيضاوي بقاء القوات الأمريكية في العراق.
During a visit to the White House, Abed al-Aziz al-Hakim said that he wants the U.S. forces to stay in Iraq because the current deteriorated security situation will not permit the withdrawal or even the reduction in the number of foreign troops in Iraq. However, al-Hakim rejected a proposal calling for a regional or an international conference on Iraq, saying that only the Iraqis hold the key to their national plight.
على ثلاثية الحكيم الشهيرة التكفيريون والصداميون والإرهابيون. بعد شهر من الآن.
During a meeting at the White House, al-Hakim gave Bush his coalition's remedy for the situation in Iraq, saying that they must deal with the terrorists, Saddamists, and Takfiris with an iron fist.
أكبر تجمع سياسي سني. موعد الزيارة أعلن في اليوم الذي أعلن فيه عن زيارة الحكيم، وهنا يفهمها مراقبون بأنها الثنائية العراقية.
President Bush is expected to meet with Tariq al-Hashimi, a representative of the Iraqi Accordance Front, which is the largest Sunni coalition in the country. Having said that, no one can say that Bush favors Shiites over Sunnis. In fact, al-Hashimi and al-Hakim's visit to Washington were announced on the same day, giving the impression that Bush wants to play one part against the other. Meanwhile, Iraqi politicians, including Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, rejected a proposal calling for an international conference on Iraq.
بعد أن قال أنان إن الوضع الحالي للعراق أسوأ من ما كان عليه في زمن صدام حسين، وأن البلاد تعيش حالة هي أسوأ من الحرب الأهلية. مثل هذه الكلمات.
In an unprecedented move, al-Maliki criticized the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan for saying that the current situation in Iraq is worse than it was under Saddam Hussein, and that the Iraqis are living a life that is more difficult than it would be during a civil war. Al-Maliki said that Iraqi opposition groups may capitalize on Annan's comments, prompting some to call for internationalizing the Iraqi plight, as well as bringing down the government. Meanwhile, the Iraqi people continue to face the consequences of violent death on a daily basis. 2 simultaneous car bomb explosions took place in the Baya neighborhood in Baghdad. Today's bomb attacks were carried out in similar fashion to previous ones, which are usually followed by gun attacks. A roadside bomb targeting a car that was carrying employees from the Shiite Community Center exploded in northern Baghdad, killing 15 people. Then the perpetrators opened fire on those who survived the explosion. This news came 12 hours after al-Hakim's statement. Many incidents are taking place every day in Baghdad and other parts of the country. All of these incidents are being added to the basket of Iraq's violence, a basket that keeps getting more and more full.
توضع في سلة العنف العراقي التي لم يتمكن أحد من رفعها بعد، كما أنها لم تملأ وتدعو للمزيد.
According to the New York Times, a senior CIA official said that the pro-Iranian Hezbollah has trained militias from the Mahdi army, which is led by the Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. Under a condition of anonymity, the spy agent said that between 1,000 to 2,000 fighters from the Mahdi army and other militia groups have received military training by Hezbollah in Lebanon. The source confirmed that with the help of Iran, some Hezbollah fighters have indeed traveled to Iraq to help train Iraqi militias.
إلى ذلك تتعرض مدينة الأعظمية خلال هذه الأيام لهجمات صاروخية كثيرة.
During the past few days, the city of Al-A'zamiyya has witnessed a wave of mortar and Katyusha rocket attacks, killing and injuring dozens of local residents. According to our correspondent in Baghdad, during the past few days, dozens of mortar shells had fallen on the Great Imam Mosque neighborhood and the surrounding residential areas in the city of Al-A'zamiyya, destroying many homes and buildings.
العديد من المنازل على ساكنيها.
مشاهد الذعر ومواكب التشييع عصفت بمدينة الأعظمية وساكنيها.
During the past few days, dozens of mortar shells and Katyusha rockets had fallen on the city of Azimiyya, leaving behind horrific scenes and bloody images. The Iraqi Ministry of Interior has erected several security checkpoints and placed the city of Al-Azimiyya under a curfew. However, some Iraqi terrorist militias, which are believed to be behind many of these mortar attacks, were seen patrolling the city streets.
العجب تصول وتجول توزع الموت على الآمنين الأبرياء في مدن وأحياء بغداد. الأعظمية الثكلى وإحدى قباب جامع الإمام الأعظم أبي حنيفة.
While local residents in Azimiyya are being confined to their homes, armed terrorist groups continue to wreak havoc and spread hatred in the streets. The terrorists have fired mortar shells at the Great Imam Hanifa al-Nu'man Mosque, killing and wounding several worshippers and damaging the mosque's dome. Several copies of the Holy Quran were also damaged in the attack. Those who attacked God's house of worship and destroyed his holy book will not be able to escape his punishment. The funeral procession was held for Ahmad Abu Shihab, who was assassinated in a cowardly fashion by armed terrorist assailants. Ahmad's mother has prayed and asked God to bless him and rest his soul. God has compassion for all those who he had created, except those who shed the blood of innocent Muslims.
I pray for Ahmad and ask God to send him straight to heaven. He was named after the Prophet. I leave it to God to judge those who killed him. God is his savior.
وهذه لآخر سقط تحت القصف الجباني أيضا وهذه لامرأة.
The bodies of two of the martyrs killed in the cowardly mortar attacks were brought for prayers to Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man Mosque in Azimiyya. Sheikh Samir al-Ubaidi, the mosque's imam, criticized the Iraqi government for failing to condemn the incident and trying to cover it up.
بل إغفالها وإسدال الستار على الجرائم التي ترتكب فيها.
We are trying to diffuse the tension and the anger of Sunni residents over the cowardly attacks on their homes and holy shrines in A'zamiyya. Several Sunni religious and political leaders, as well as mosques and homes, were targeted in A'zamiyya. The great Imam Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man Mosque was substantially damaged by mortar shells. The Iraqi government did not only fail to condemn these cowardly attacks, but it also failed to help the families whose homes were destroyed.
الشيخ العبيدي لم ينس أن يستنكر.
Sheikh al-Ubaidi also condemned the previous attacks that were launched in the predominantly Shiite city of Sadr, urging the Iraqi people to rally behind the national unity.
للعراقيين.
We ask the Iraqi government to treat all Iraqis equally. We like to pay tribute to the martyrs who were killed in the city of Sadr. The cities of A'zamiyya and Sadr had their share of terrorist attacks. Many civilians in both cities were killed and wounded, as well as many homes and mosques were targeted. The government must treat both Iraqi Sunnis and Shiites equally. I pray to God to unite and bring us closer to each other. Amen.
بين منازل كثيرة.
This home in the area of Safina in the Azimiyya was leveled to the ground by a mortar shell. In addition, this home near the Umar bin Abdul Aziz Street was substantially damaged, and the episode continues. Amidst the rubble and destruction, the city of Azimiyya has become a ghost town where only the echoes of hatred and vows of vengeance can be heard.
باتت إطلالا خلت من أهلها فباتت رياح الحقد والجريمة تصفر فيها.
This is a 120 series mortar shell that was manufactured in 2006. It fell over here, causing substantial damage to these homes and buildings.
This woman described the bloody images and assessed the damages sustained in a mortar attack that targeted a home in this neighborhood. She tried to explain the reasons and objectives behind these attacks. With a few simple but honest words, she taught us a lesson about the facts of life, facts that many Iraqi officials and politicians were unable to explain.
Fearing for our lives, we do not sleep during the night. Mortar shells may fall at any time, at any place. We should fight the enemy, not our Muslim brothers. Muslims are like brothers, and they should not kill one another. Iraqis must forgive, reconcile, and unite. The Iraqi people have not done anything wrong to deserve this.
Omar Al-Ubaidi,
Baghdad Satellite Channel, Baghdad.
The NATO-led troops in Afghanistan announced that they had killed 80 Taliban fighters in fierce battles near the town of Musa Kala in the southern part of the country.
أكثر من 4 ساعات استمرت المعارك بين قوات حلف شمال الأطلسي ومقاتلين من حركة.
Battles between NATO forces and the Taliban movement lasted for 4 hours, during which 80 Taliban fighters were killed. NATO forces had planted an ambush for them in the town of Musa Kala in Helmand.
جاءت في وقت قال فيه متحدث باسم الناتو إن قوات الحلف لم تتكبد أي خسائر خلال القتال.
While the Taliban forces sustained these losses, a NATO spokesman said that his forces did not sustain any losses during the fighting. These battles are considered the largest since the British forces made an agreement with local warlords in which they vowed to ensure the withdrawal of the Taliban fighters if the British forces were to leave.
بعد مصرع أفراد طاقم مروحية مدنية كانت استأجرتها قوات الحلف سقطت يوم السبت في جنوب
The last battles came after a civilian plane had crashed in southern Afghanistan, killing its entire crew. Meanwhile, a suicide bomber attacked a NATO forces convoy in Kandahar, killing and injuring many soldiers and civilians. This comes as the coalition forces led by NATO have been facing increased attacks by the Taliban movement, whose regime was toppled 5 years ago.
بحكمهم لأفغانستان منذ 5 أعوام. منى دريباتي العربية.
The police appealed for calm on the streets of Beirut today amid fears of a descent into sectarian violence as protesters prepared for the funeral of Ahmad Mahmoud, killed during mass opposition rallies on Sunday. Police called on the opposition to prevent their followers from provoking clashes after 2 consecutive nights of street fights. Meanwhile, security forces arrested a person in the Barbir neighborhood who was allegedly carrying weapons in his car. Yesterday, soldiers went into action late at night after riot police were overwhelmed by protesters who invaded Sunni neighborhoods in vehicles, prompting residents to retaliate. May Fawaz reports.
The Lebanese army intervened to break up clashes in Beirut late Monday between government supporters and protesters calling for the government to resign. About 300 enraged protesters also blocked the Beirut airport highway after midnight, but the Lebanese army intervened and reopened the road. Fighting erupted in several mainly Sunni neighborhoods late on Monday as the body of Ali Ahmad Mahmoud, who was killed in similar fighting a day before, was taken by ambulance to downtown Beirut, where thousands of Hezbollah-led protesters were camping for the 4th night, demanding the toppling of Fuad al-Senura's government. Witnesses said the soldiers who were already positioned in Beirut went into action after riot police were beset by protesters who invaded one of the Sunni neighborhoods in vehicles, prompting residents to strike back. According to the police, about 60 anti-government protesters made their way into Kaskas and Mazraa through a side road opposite to where the army vehicles were deployed, shattering the windows of 3 parked cars and several stores with stones and sticks. They said 2 people were wounded when protesters broke into the house of one of the citizens before security forces intervened and dispersed them. The police accused the rioters of entering Kaskas and Mazraa regions not to express their views, but to harass the people, provoke them, and damage their properties. Hundreds of army troops guarded the entrances of other Sunni areas, fearing revenge attacks, while at the protest site, Hezbollah disciplined men in civilian clothes were maintaining a tight grip on the crowds.
And the night before, a large bunch of Hezbollah supporters attacked the village of Pshamoun, destroying private property and looting stores. The bunch viciously attacked many citizens of the region with knives and sticks, causing severe injury on many while arresting others. The inhabitants attacked were unarmed.
The Makhtara district will not hold a public celebration on the birthday anniversary of the martyr CalmFuture. Representative WorldANB warned against holding a political demonstration amidst the current crisis.
The day before the birthday anniversary for the martyr CalmFuture, the head of the Democratic meeting, Representative WorldANB, called for calm in order to deal with the spreading crisis. Though he offered his condolences for the martyr Ahmed Mahmoud, Jumblat called on people to wait for the results from the investigation into his death.
I join my voice with the voices of the Future Bloc. The Future Bloc does not have a militia, so we must wait for the results of the investigation. The Future Bloc does not have a militia. The Future Bloc was founded on making peace and making progress according to the principles of Rafiq al-Hariri. This is why we cannot make quick judgments without pouring fuel and igniting the flame of division. There are no dead ends in politics. We will be patient. There is nothing called a dead end in politics.
Jumblat called on the government delegation to choose an alternative path, and he also called on the demonstrators to respect specific sensitive areas, citing the recent events at the Lebanese university.
أطلب من الطلاب طلاب الجبل أن لا يذهبوا إلى الجامعة مع الأسف. هناك فرصة الأعياد قادمة.
I am regrettably asking the students in the mountains not to go to the university. There will be future opportunities to celebrate. We must be patient and study in our homes until the danger subsides at the Lebanese university, until Lebanese university once again becomes a center of education and not a center of agitation. The university was a major institution that was built by Rafiq al-Hariri and the country of Lebanon. He, Hariri, wanted all Lebanese students to gather and have access to this center, but today it has become the exclusive domain of only one group, which is monopolizing all of Lebanon. We have a saying, you can learn something about the parents by watching their kids. For example, an article in one of the newspapers says, from the Hamidiyya market to the Solidarity market, from the Hamidiyya market to the collapse of the government. It is strange how there is a mentality and a culture of hate towards our capital, the capital of all the Lebanese people. Why? Why this hate? Why this defamation? Because authoritative regimes can only think in this way.
هذا التشبيه لأنه لا تستطيع مع الأسف الأنظمة
Jumblat called for a settlement based on the principle of no winners, no losers. He reiterated that the March 14th forces are in total solidarity with President Faoud Siniora and that the opposition will ultimately be convinced that a settlement can only come about through dialogue. Jumblat commended the Lebanese army for its diligent work in maintaining peace and security.
Joining us is the Syrian ambassador to the United Kingdom, Dr. Sami Al-Khayyami. I would like to take advantage of your diplomatic position by asking you about the recent improvement in the Western Syrian relations. I'm referring to the contacts that took place in Spain and Italy and the recent statements that were made by American officials in addition to the visit of the British official and the recent development in the Syrian-Iraqi relationship. Are there any specific plans to improve the Western Syrian relations?
يجب أن لا ننسى أننا نحن الآن في بداية طريق التواصل وفتح الأقنية وبالتالي فالنقاشات لا تزال في طورها الابتدائي.
We must not forget that we are still at the beginning of the road. We just started these new contacts and therefore negotiations are still at the primary level. It is premature to talk about the details. Europe can be divided into three groups. In the south, European countries like Italy and Greece have an affinity with the rest of the Mediterranean countries. They feel that the lack of security in the Middle East will affect the security and economy of Europe. This explains why they are always saying that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict must be solved. They view it as a festering wound. They want us to live in peace so they can live in peace.
إلى وجهة نظر التي تقول يجب أن نوجد حلا للقضية الفلسطينية، يجب أن نوجد حلا للقضية العراقية، يجب أن ننتهي من هذه الدملة الموجودة حتى لو إذا لم يحبونا فهم يحبون على.
The second group are the Scandinavian countries in Northern Europe, such as Sweden and Norway. They enjoy a high level of democracy, which makes them concerned with issues affecting human rights. Scandinavian countries are aware of the Palestinian, Lebanese, and Iraqi victims that have been falling every day. It is easy to have a dialogue with them. The main problem is the third group of European countries, which are located in the middle of Europe, such as Germany, France, and Britain. Although these countries know the Arab world very well, they felt that they could play the role of Washington's co-pilot in its project of Americanizing the world.
ألمانيا وفرنسا هذه الدول رغم معرفتها بالعالم العربي جيدا إلا أنها وحتى بريطانيا شعرت بأنها يمكن أن تلعب دور الكوبايلوت الطيار المساعد للولايات المتحدة في عملية الأمريكي التي
The United States wanted to control the oil fields by invading Iraq so they can control the economic growth of China, India, and Japan. The United States wanted to control the world's resources because it could no longer dominate the world's economy through globalization. These European countries thought for a while that if they play the role of Washington's co-pilot, then they might be able to reap some benefits. However, after realizing that the United States was stuck in the Iraqi quagmire and that the Israeli army was defeated in Lebanon, which is an extremely important matter, unfortunately the Lebanese have not been able to capitalize on this great victory that they have achieved. Nevertheless, after these two events, the European countries were forced to change their policy vis-à-vis the Middle East. The recent policy of openness towards Syria comes within this context. Our contacts with them are still at the initial stage, as we are communicating and explaining our positions. We must let negotiations progress a little bit, for a month or two, so things can become clear.
خطا أوروبيا آخر هذا دعا إلى الانفتاح على سوريا وبالتالي الاتصال في بداياته ونحن في عملية اتصال وتبادل مواقف ويجب أن ندع الأمور تتقدم قليلا ربما شهر أو شهرين لتتضح الأمور.
Good evening. A political firestorm has erupted following the decision by Education Minister Yuli Tamir to restore the Green Line, the country's pre-67 borders, to school textbooks. Tamir argues that Israel has never annexed the West Bank, so it's therefore not an integral part of the country, and this should be made clear to students. But right-wingers are accusing Tamir of losing her sense of nationalism and charge that her proposal is better suited to the Peace Now movement than the Israeli education system. The Yesha Settlers Council has called on all schools not to follow the minister's directive. They charge that Tamir is trying to use what they call educational propaganda to remove about 1/5 of the state of Israel from the map, eliminating historic land which served as the cradle of Jewish history. Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh has never acted in any way to prevent terrorist groups from carrying out attacks against Israel. This according to Haniyeh himself, who told an audience of Palestinian refugees in Syria that he does not condemn the so-called resistance, but rather embraces it. Haniyeh told the gathering that he will never give up even a single grain of land, nor will he give up the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Speaking to the Lebanese media, Hamas leader in exile Khalid Mash'al said that the so-called Hudna or truce was simply a Palestinian tactic in the conflict with Israel. Mash'al added that even after the establishment of a Palestinian state, Hamas will never recognize Israel because pre-67 Israel would still be occupying parts of Palestine. The state controller has issued a scathing report on the IDF High Command, charging that many of the Army's senior officers fail to undergo formal training at the military academy. IBA's Dennis Zinn has more.
Still battered and reeling from the criticism and the ongoing investigations over the Second Lebanon War, the IDF's response to the state controller's report on the defense establishment was lengthy and less laconic than in previous years. State Controller Michael Lindenstrauss revealed a host of serious faults in the army. The investigators found that a high percentage of officers from the rank of lieutenant colonel upwards are not receiving the prescribed training to fill their posts adequately. According to the controller, this causes a situation whereby the different commanders do not have a unified language to manage and coordinate large formations, especially in times of emergency. Lindenstrauss said that in the last 12 years, the IDF has not produced a single paper on large-scale military tactics. For the first time ever in this year's report is an open section on the Dimona atomic facility. However, the deficiencies described relate to the fields of manpower, salary and perks. A hefty part of the report deals with women soldiers. It slams the conscription authority for allowing so many women to evade draft. A large percentage of young girls who do not serve do so by falsely claiming to be religious. The report also criticized the army for not dealing adequately with sexual harassment. Other sections deal with the defense ministry, allocations of the defense budget, the general security services, the defense minister's bureau, the border police, the emergency weapons and general supply stores, and on and on. The report is comprehensive and scathing. Miri Regev, the IDF spokeswoman, last night said that the army is studying the report and intends to deal systematically with all the stated problems in the shortest time possible. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, thanks for joining us. This is JNN English News and I'm Fariba Wahid. In Tehran, Iranian President Ahmadinejad told local residents in Behshahr, Mazandaran province Tuesday, colonial powers have lined up in opposition to Tehran's atomic rights, only to deny Iranians scientific breakthroughs. He further said big powers that are the staunch advocates of A-bombs are playing a fight on atomic bombs card, and that is why they have backed a bunch of Zionist killers in occupied Palestine. President Ahmadinejad continued major powers are expected to drop frame-ups and prove in practice they are supporters of human rights. Earlier, the president told residents in the northern city of Saudi, Iran is passing through the final stages of using nuclear technology for peaceful ends.
He told folks in the city of Sari in the northern Iranian province of Mazandaran on Tuesday, Tehran will soon shift the focus from its peaceful nuclear drive onto development activities in other areas. He took a jab at those who are opposed to Iran developing a civilian nuclear program, adding it is now clearly evident that they are not really concerned over what they claim is Tehran's pursuit of nukes, but they are bent on putting the brakes on the Iranian nation's progress. Ahmadinejad warned if those that are against Iran's peaceful atomic work resort to propaganda ploys in international circles and take any steps against the rights and interests of Iran, Tehran will regard it as hostility and rethink having relations with them.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters, or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Feyerdahl Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.